Daily Wire. The thing that is really appalling is the New York Times and the National Review, I think it is, the famous left-wing journal. That's National Review is the right-wing journal. Who am I thinking of? I can't remember now, but it doesn't matter. It's their famous left-wing journal have published articles explaining why universities have the right to censor speech. The one in the New York Times is virtually illiterate, but it's by Ulrich Baer, who is the vice provost for faculty, arts, humanities, and diversity. And he's a professor of comparative literature at NYU, all right? And he writes, during the 1980s and 90s, a shift occurred in American culture. Personal experience and testimony, especially of suffering and oppression, began to challenge the primacy of argument. Now, think about that for a minute. That personal experience and testimony began to challenge the primacy of argument. So in other words, if you can say how much you've suffered, logic, objective truth, no longer matters. He goes on to say, freedom of expression became a flashpoint in this shift. Then as now, both liberals and conservatives were wary of privileging personal experience with its powerful emotional impact over reason and argument, which some fear will bring an end to civilization, or at least to freedom of speech. My view, and this does not, he says, represent the views of NYU, is that we should resist the temptation to rehash these debates. Doing so would overlook the fact that a thorough generational shift has occurred. In other words, the free speech toothpaste is out of the tube and we can't put it back in. Widespread caricatures of students as overly sensitive fail to acknowledge the philosophical work that was carried out, especially in the 80s and 90s, to legitimate experience over logical argument. So he then quotes the philosopher Jean-Francois Lyotard, libtard, I guess he should be called, best known for his prescient analysis and the postmodern condition of how public discourse discards the categories of true, false, and just, unjust in favor of valuing the mere fact that something is being communicated. Examine the tension between experience and argument in a different way. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of that wonderful show, Curb Your Enthusiasm. The terrible suffering of these college students, it trumps argument. And it reminds me of that show. There was an episode, one of the funniest things I've ever seen on television. There was an episode in which they invited over a bunch of survivors, Holocaust survivors. But one person misunderstood and invited a guy from the show Survivor, a guy who had won the show Survivor. And the kid who had been on Survivor started to argue with the Holocaust survivors about who had been through a worse experience. Here's a short clip of this. I think it's hilarious.
It was harrowing. You come across a taipan on the trail, you get bit, you're dead. 30 minutes flat.
Boy, I'll tell you, that's a very interesting story. Let me tell you, I was in a concentration camp. You never even suffered 1 minute in your life compared to what I went through.
Look, I'm saying we spent 42 days trying to survive. We had very little rations, no snacks.
Snacks? What are you talking snacks? We didn't eat, sometimes for a week. For a month, we ate nothing. I went from home.
I mean, I couldn't even work out when I was over there. They certainly didn't have a gym.
What?
I mean, I wore my sneakers out, and then the next thing you know, I've got a pair of flip-flops.
Flip-flops?
We slip on the ground, on the dirt, okay? 118 degrees during the day, 98 at night with 98% humidity.
45 degrees below zero.
Did you guys have a bathroom?
A bathroom?
We didn't have one.
We had 12 people at a time would go and
well, I'm sure you had toilet paper.
We had newspaper.
We had mosquitoes. We certainly didn't have mosquitoes.
You see this glass eye? Huh?
Have you even seen the show?
Did you ever see our show?
God. All right, listen, we have to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube, but over on thedailywire.com, where the show will continue, it's Mailbag Day. I almost forgot to mention we're going to answer all your questions. Our answers are 100% guaranteed correct and guaranteed also to change your life, possibly for the better. Have some really good questions. So come on over to thedailywire.com and hear the rest of the show.